draped dress has a thesis and a story. And to understand why that matters, I had to go back a long way. And not just to the designers that made it famous, but to the women who first took up a spindle. These are the books that took me there. Starting with Women's Work by Elizabeth Wayland Barber, the iconic fashion historian. This one changed everything for me. Barber is an archaeologist and a linguist who spent decades reconstructing what women were actually doing in the ancient world, and the answer is textiles. Spinning, weaving, dyeing. She argues that women invented string, and that string is arguably the most transformative technology in human history. If you only read one book from this list, this is the one. I've also listened to it on audiobook and it is fantastic, but the benefit in this is that there's heaps of awesome diagrams. The Golden Thread by Kassia and Clair. I have had this book in my library since basically when I was at fashion school, and it is such an incredible book. Kassia and Clair traces the history of fabric from Egyptian linen to spacesuits, and she does it beautifully. This is my favorite book, and it really reads like a series of portraits, each chapter a different cloth or a different moment in history. And by the end, you understand that textile is how human beings have always made meaning. This is St. Clair's other book, The Secret Lives of Colour, and it really earns its place here. Each chapter is a different colour, and it's about its history, its chemistry, its politics, who got to wear it, who was forbidden from wearing it, and what it cost to produce. So for a project about fabric and power, it's really essential reading for me, and it fed directly into the colour decisions behind my upcoming print collection. Fabric of Civilisation by Virginia Postrel. Postrel comes at it from an economics angle, how cloth built trade networks, economies, and empires. It's a different lens to Barber, but they stick perfectly together, honestly. One tells you what women were making, and the other tells you what happened to it once it left their hands. Empire of Cotton by Sven Beckert. This is definitely a darker book, being the history of cotton and the slave trade and how that was so inextricably linked. Beckert traces cotton from its origins through to the Industrial Revolution and the slave trade that underpinned it. So it's essential context, and you can't talk about the history of cloth without talking about who paid for it. And this is an incredible, truthful, honest, and devastating look at that history. Now, before I get into the dress and design books, I want to talk about these books that have really impacted the way I operate as a designer, but also helped me so much when I was studying fashion design. I've been using Fashionary since my earliest years of studying fashion design. My two key books when I was studying were Fashionpedia, which is this beautiful one here with the orange pages. This is an incredible book. It's essentially a visual dictionary of fashion design. So every silhouette, every construction technique is illustrated and named. So that's so helpful. And the other one is Textilepedia. I used this more when I was working within the industry as a fashion designer and a textile designer. I think because fabrics and fiber knowledge was just so low, essentially, within the fashion merchandising industry. So this was a staple. I knew a lot of it, but also it was really handy for a lot of colleagues that I had who didn't know so much about fabrics. This one's called Stylepedia. Stylepedia covers fashion styles across history and culture, and I've been wanting this one for ages, which is the Knitwear Manual. It is such a beautiful book. Knitwear feels like a whole different language to me. I understand woven cloth, but knitwear is just like a whole different dimension. So this book really shows you all you really need to know about knitwear. So I'm excited to really dive into that one. And the Fashion Business Manual. I think if you are anyone who wants to start their own fashion business, their own label, become a designer, even just if you want to go into the fashion industry and you want to kind of understand the industry better in terms of all of the pieces that make up the industry as a whole. The Fashion Business Manual is the one that I wish I had when I was starting out. Contracts, production, pricing, sourcing, anything you want to know about the business side of fashion design, this is the one. Now, Fashionary have kindly set up a discount code for you guys if you're wanting any of these books or any of their products or fashion design apps as well. So the code is Goddess10, and that will get you 10% off any of these or any of the apps, which I'll be using in future videos, but I'll put the code and the link in the description box below. This is Fortuny, Time, Space and Light by Wendy Ligon Smith. Now, Mario Fortuny, you may know, he was the inventor, well, his wife was the inventor of the Delphos gown. So he spent his life obsessed with ancient Greek dress, and the Delphos gown he designed in 1907 is a direct translation of the chiton into silk pleating form. So this book is a monograph and it is stunning. And it also makes the case for his wife Henriette as the genuine co-designer and essentially inventor of the pleating technique. Like her name was on the patent for the invention. So it's an incredible insight into how pivotal a role she played within the Fortuny legacy. An incredible and beautiful book. And my favorite, Madame Grès. She is one of my favorite, if not my most favorite designer in the history of fashion. And this is an incredible book. She essentially trained as a sculptor before she trained as a couturier, and it really shows. Her work really drapes like marble and mirrors those ancient Greek and Roman statues. So this is the book I reach for whenever I just need to remember what fabric can actually do when someone truly understands it. She was just an absolute mastermind, and fascinating to hear the stories about her life and just like kind of her attitude towards fashion. It was really fascinating to read, and just, you know, the images are stunning as well. The next one is Dressed by Shahidha Bari. Bari is essentially a philosopher, and this kind of reads like philosophy. I loved how it opened talking about Maggie Cheongsam's that she wears at the start of Wong Kar-wai's film In the Mood for Love. That's like one of my favorite films, and how it's all set in Hong Kong. It's just beautiful. But the Cheongsams she wears in that movie, there's so many of them, and they're all so beautifully tailored to her. So the fact that like the first paragraph is opening talking about those dresses, I was just like, I'm gonna love this book. So each chapter she takes a single garment and unpacks it. The politics and the desire, the history, it's probably one of the most intellectually rigorous books on this list, and also one of the most personal. So I'm really loving reading that at the moment. This one I got a couple of months ago, and essentially I saw it and it said fashion, the whole story. And I was like, really? The entire story in one book? But genuinely, it is a fantastic book. And I think it's really helpful to see it along a timeline and seeing what else was happening in the world at that time. I actually just love the layout of all the pages and how it kind of zooms in on different areas and gives more detail and depth to what was happening at that time and how that created essentially these types of garments or trends, or so love fashion, the whole story. Now, on top of all of that, I'm also doing a lot more deeper research into, I guess you could say, the political side of fashion. And I have learned, like you can see here, this is Edward Said's Orientalism, and I've only read, I'd say, a third there. And I don't know if you can see, but I have highlighted and put notes on so many different pages. I have learnt so much from this book, and every day, whilst kind of running around after two toddlers, I try to read 2 or 3 pages. It is very dense. I've had to look up a lot of words and what they mean, but genuinely it has expanded my understanding of, I guess, how Orientalism was created, why it was created, and how it is still so prevalent in the world, but especially the fashion industry today. Like when we talk about exotic or boho, what that actually means. And when you see designers copying, like how Prada's copied the Indian sandal, and it just, once you understand hegemony and Orientalism, you start to really view the fashion industry in a completely different way, and you're seeing the kind of disproportionate levels of power within the industry on a manufacturing level, physical level, but also just like on a credit level of where those designs are coming from and what they mean to different cultures. So this is giving so much context and depth to all of these other books. Now, this is The Odyssey, which has been translated by Emily Wilson. And this is the first time The Odyssey has been translated by a woman into English specifically. It's been done in other languages by women, but this is the first time it's been translated by a woman into English. And first of all, it's a stunning book. It's got these beautiful textured side pages, but yeah, it is just so beautiful to read. I've also listened to it on audiobook, and Claire Danes is the narrator, and her voice is just so beautiful and just gives so much drama and theatre to essentially what was meant to be an oratory art, right? So the Odyssey was meant to be spoken aloud and as if it were poetry being said in a theatre or, you know, within a community. So I think listening to Claire Danes talk about it and narrate it is just a really beautiful way to experience like a woman narrating another woman's translation. Like, it's really beautiful. So highly recommend reading that, listening to Claire Danes. This is The Women of Troy by Euripides, and I haven't actually read this one yet. I thrifted it, but I know it's going to be devastating. But I'm really interested to read it. I think we see so much about the story of Troy and the Odyssey and the Iliad and the men and what Odysseus was doing and Agamemnon and Achilles, but we rarely hear about like the impact it had on the women and what they were going through when all the men were, you know, fighting and killing each other. So I'm really interested to read this one. And I think it can be really daunting when you try and get into Greek mythology, that you see the texts and they're quite dense and you see all these different names and they're all kind of connected, but you don't know how, and you essentially lose track of the amount of people that are in these, you know, incredible texts. But Stephen Fry has a wonderful way of making it super digestible and funny and interesting, and he connects all the dots together as well, so it kind of makes sense as like this universe. So I actually listened to the Odyssey on audiobook, and I highly recommend it because Stephen Fry narrates it and he does different voices for different people, and it's quite funny, but it also sinks in. You know, it's not just like dense text where you forget it the moment you've turned the page. But the book is really great too. So you've got some images in between of, you know, famous artworks that essentially depict the stories that were happening in the Odyssey. So I highly recommend that as well. Two other things that have been on my desk throughout this whole project have been this incredible reading journal from the Quirky Cup Co. And it's just like the most stunning reading journal I think I've ever seen in my life. So I'm filling it out at the moment because I finished The Song of Achilles, and I'm just such a stickler for like an amazing pen, and this one is just incredible. So I've got that little bundle there. Also, I've been very lucky to get gifted this incredible Kobo Libra from Kobo, which has a pen with it. That means I can actually highlight certain areas and write notes, and it's just, yeah, incredible. So this is the one I'm currently reading on my Kobo, which has been fantastic. And I've also gotten this beautiful e-reader decoration pack from Quirky Cup Co as well. And so it's called the Persephone case. So you've got the pomegranate and you've got these beautiful little charms here, a little pomegranate, a little skull, and a little flower. Because if you know the story of Persephone, it is all to do with the seasons and the underworld and the pomegranate. So yeah, I'm so grateful. Thank you to Quirky Cup Co for sending me this because I am obsessed. And all of this research really feeds into something that I've been building over the last couple of months, which is the Goddess Project. It's a content series which is going to be tracing the history of draped dress all the way from the Indus Valley and Mesopotamia, all the way through to the 20th century and what we see on the runways today. And it will all culminate into a sewing pattern that I am calling the Esther. It's going to be a draped dress which really flows with your body and adjusts for where you're at. It meets you and your body where you're at. And I'm so excited. I'm designing it very soon, and I'm excited to see how all of this information really informs what the actual design will be for the Esther. And if you want to follow along, everything is linked in the description box below. I've been talking about it on my podcast, The Culture of Cloth, and I'll also be diving much deeper into my Substack and sharing a lot of my findings over there. So if you want to join me on Substack, I'll leave a link below. And thank you to Fashionary for partnering with me on this project. I'm so excited and grateful for all these incredible books. And let me know if there's a book on this list that you've read before. I'd love to hear your thoughts or memories on those books. And if you have actually any other books you want to suggest, I'm always adding to my TBR. Thanks for watching.